This is Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine. On March 15th, President Trump ordered a series of airstrikes on Houthi-held areas in Yemen. The Houthis have been attacking shipping vessels along several international shipping routes for over a year and a half. On March 24th, The Atlantic published the following article written by Goldberg titled, "The Trump Administration Accidentally Texted Me Its War Plans." It turns out that National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, or someone on his staff, had added Goldberg to a chat group on Signal, the encrypted messaging service.
He was texting war plans. He was texting attack plans. When targets were going to be targeted, how they were going to be targeted, who was at the targets, when the next sequence of attacks were happening. I didn't publish this, and I continue not to publish it because it felt like it was too confidential, too technical, and I worry, honestly, that sharing that kind of information in public could endanger American military personnel.
So the information shared on Signal was so confidential, so technical, so dangerous, that Jeffrey Goldberg, in a follow-up article, published the entirety of the chat. Goldberg provided images of the text group, including the war plans, now downgraded to attack plans. And as you'll see, Goldberg's description was exaggerated.
He was texting attack plans, when targets were going to be targeted.
While Hegseth texted when targets were going to be hit, he doesn't reveal locations of those targets, let alone what those targets actually were.
How they were going to be targeted.
How includes F-18s, MQ-9 strike drones, bombs, and sea-based Tomahawk missiles.
Who was at the targets.
The only description of subjects targeted was terrorist, and at one target, not targets. And who was it exactly? Couldn't tell you. But it was presumably a Houthi, so it could have been one of hundreds of thousands of terrorists. And yet Goldberg went on national television and lied through his teeth.
I'm going to be responsible here and not disclose the things that I read and saw. I will describe them to you. The specific time of a future attack, specific targets, including human targets, meant to be killed in that attack.
So Jeffrey Goldberg, who made up the losers and suckers hoax, lied again. I know you're shocked. And considering that Goldberg is probably the most hostile journalist towards Trump, it's just bizarre that he was the one person that was invited into this chat.
So the reason to post it is because I think people should see for themselves. They're saying nothing happened. I'm saying that this represents a serious breach in national security and communications. And so, you know what? That's what journalism is for. Here, go look at it for yourselves and decide if this represented a serious breach of secrecy and national security.
So Goldberg exaggerated what was in the group chat, saying that it was too sensitive and dangerous for public viewing, but then was like, well, I'm gonna post it anyway, to let the American public decide how serious it was. Sure, okay.
Men and women could have died. They were on combat missions when this information was flying around a Signal app. I mean, they were wrong for even being on that unsecure app.
Now, I'm not a national security expert, but I don't see how any of this very vague information could or would put any of our troops at risk. My favorite take on this is from It's Me the Mayor on X. I read the texts, there was nothing there. Houthis go boom. Good job, team. That's it.
The journalists that they have been maligning now for 2 days handled it with incredible discretion.
That's a fucking joke, right? I mean, according to Goldberg's account of events, on Tuesday, March 11th, I received a connection request on Signal from a user identified as Michael Waltz. Then Goldberg says, I accepted the connection request, hoping that this was the actual national security advisor and that he wanted to chat about Ukraine or Iran or some other important matter. 2 days later, Goldberg received a notice that he was to be included in a Signal chat called the Houthi PC Small Group. So hang on, Goldberg received a connection request from Mike Waltz, and then over the next 2 days, Never thought to respond? I think just about anyone would be curious enough to say, hey Mike, heard that you reached out. What's going on? But the fact that Goldberg didn't do that is highly suspect. Goldberg went on to explain that the term Principals Committee generally refers to a group of the most senior national security officials, including the Secretaries of Defense, State, and the Treasury, as well as the Director of the CIA. So even though he is not a White House official, not only did he stay in the chat, but he never bothered to reach out to Michael Waltz or anyone and say, why am I invited to the chat? Is this a mistake? I mean, he claims, I didn't think it could be real. But at the same time, he accepted the connection request, hoping that it was real. So Jeffrey Goldberg, a journalist, wasn't sure that it was real. But he never bothered to get confirmation that it was real from Mike Waltz or anyone at the White House. Makes sense to me, what's your problem? It should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway, that I have never been invited to a White House Principals Committee meeting, and that in my many years of reporting on national security matters, I had never heard of one being convened over a commercial messaging app. An app, by the way, that was approved for White House use by the Biden administration. But again, Jeffrey Goldberg knew that he was added to this group by mistake, and he didn't log out of the chat until he had something that he could use against the Trump administration. And then he subsequently published several articles about it, including publishing the contents of the group chat. You know, because he showed incredible discretion. Give me a break.
This could have, instead of being Jeffrey Goldberg, it could have been somebody entirely different, and the results could have been devastating.
How? Let's assume for a moment that Michael Waltz made a mistake and punched in the wrong name. Do you think that there is anyone in his contact list who could have put our troops at risk and done harm regarding the mission? If you're an honest person, the answer is no. But then again, CNN is really trying to make the case that what Pete Hegseth and Mike Waltz posted in what was supposed to be a private chat damaged our over-the-horizon intelligence methods.
But offering the Houthis sort of a clear breadcrumb to figure out how the U.S. was surveilling them might allow them to avoid that surveillance in the future. Then in a second text from National Security Advisor Michael Waltz later in the thread, he tells the group after the strikes are done that the U.S., quote, had positive ID of a particular senior Houthi leader, quote, walking into his girlfriend's building. This, again, really kind of draws a roadmap for Houthi militants in terms of how the U.S. was conducting surveillance on their movements, on their leadership, again, making it easier for Houthi leaders to potentially avoid that kind of surveillance in the future. This is why, according to our sources, this kind of information is normally kept deeply, deeply classified.
Of course, they wouldn't have been able to read them had the texts not been published by The Atlantic, but CNN didn't come to that conclusion.
I want people to be safe, and I want to make sure that our military doesn't die from another potential leak like this.
I'm sorry, nobody died from this. A.
Well,
B.
They were put at risk. They were
previous-
absolutely put at risk.
Luckily.
CNN sources say that.
I mean, how much accountability was meted out upon the previous administration when people did actually die? Zero.
Correct. No one got fired for the botched withdrawal of Afghanistan. In fact, no one ever got fired in the Biden administration for anything. Remember when Lloyd Austin disappeared to have surgery and didn't tell anybody?
Did you demand Lloyd Austin? Did you demand Lloyd Austin? Yeah, but did you demand Lloyd Austin's resignation when he was out of pocket for 2 weeks and didn't tell anyone in the White House till 4 days afterwards that he was not in charge of as Secretary of Defense?
I called that out as inappropriate behavior. I called
you didn't
out,
demand a resignation.
One of the first folks.
This will probably blow over, Senator.
That push. Well, I know you hope that, but if
no, I don't. Why would I? I don't care.
I would just say, Joe.
Got him. Anyway, Senator Warner is going all over TV and making claims that Tulsi Gabbard and John Ratcliffe lied to Congress when they testified that there was no classified information in the text group.
Are you saying that they committed perjury, and are there consequences? Should there be consequences for that?
Go back and read the transcript. No classified information, no military plans, and look what came out today. What I'm just amazed at is why they didn't even prep. Did they really think they could buffalo their way through this and obfuscate? Again, it's a level of arrogance and incompetence that frankly is terrifying, and is so, why I'm so kind of upset is this puts our guys and gals in harm's way. This ruins our relationships around the world.
Notice that Senator Liplicker isn't upset with Jeffrey Goldberg publishing information that ruins our relationship around the world or puts our guys and gals in harm's way. No, he's only concerned with undermining the Trump administration.
It's stunning. It's likely the biggest national security debacle that any professional can remember.
Guess Susan Rice, national security professional, completely forgot about the Benghazi debacle that happened under her watch as UN ambassador, where a United States diplomatic post and CIA annex was attacked, leading to the death of US Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens. They even made a movie about it. Maybe you should watch it, Susan, to refresh your memory. Now, as far as National Security Advisor Mike Waltz goes, he, or someone on his staff, was responsible for adding Jeffrey Goldberg to the group chat, supposedly inadvertently.
Laura, I take responsibility. I built the group.
Okay.
So but look, that's the part that we have to figure out, and that's the part that embarrassing, yes.
So to his credit, Waltz is owning up to it and taking responsibility. So far, so good.
I can tell you for 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is a bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone, and we're going to figure out how this happened.
So you don't know what staffer is responsible for this right now?
Well, look, a staffer wasn't responsible, and look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did the
execute
number? I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number?
Have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number there?
I never make those mistakes.
Right? I'm sure everybody out there has had a contact where it was said one person and then a different phone number.
That has literally never happened to me before. Look, I don't like this part of the excuse, and I'm not buying it. Even if there was some syncing error with phone contacts, it still doesn't explain why Jeffrey Goldberg was a contact in the first place.
But you've never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone? I mean, I'm not an expert in any of this, but it's just curious. How's the number on your phone?
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets sucked in, it gets sucked in. Certainly wasn't reaching out or talking to him at all. Why would I?
Mike Waltz claims that he never communicated with Jeffrey Goldberg, and I'm inclined to believe him, considering that Goldberg would have posted an article by now disputing Waltz's claims. Anyway, if you follow me on X, and why wouldn't you, you'd know that I came up with my own theory on the matter. Basically, I wrote that thanks to account or device migration between White House administrations, contacts were carried over from a former Biden official, specifically the contact list of National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. And that would address the reason Goldberg's contact info would be on Mike Waltz's phone, but it doesn't address the chat invite. In a phone interview with NBC News, President Trump was asked what he was told about how Goldberg came to be added to the Signal chat. Trump said it was one of Michael's people on the phone. A staffer had his number on there. In response, Miranda Devine from the New York Post wrote on X, President Trump has told NBC that it was not Waltz, but one of his people who added Goldberg to the chat. Somebody who has Goldberg in his/her phone contacts added him, maybe deliberately, maybe accidentally. It seems absurd that the most destructive, deceptive anti-Trump journalist from the most hostile, sloppy anti-Trump publication could accidentally have been added. There were 150 holdovers from the Biden administration at the National Security Council from various agencies when Waltz took over, and that he only purged several dozen of them. So Miranda Devine is suggesting that a Biden administration holdover not only added Goldberg to the Signal group chat, but was also colluding with Goldberg. And consider that whoever added Goldberg to the chat also made the initial connection request on Signal 2 days prior. So if this was an honest mistake, it was a mistake that was made twice. Look, there needs to be some accountability because this is an embarrassing distraction that the Trump White House does not need. And I would not be surprised if there's an internal investigation and eventual forced resignation. At the very least, we need to know exactly how this went down, and along with it, the certainty that it doesn't happen again. And on that note, that's it for now. Again, follow me on X at Don't Walk Run. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time, if there is next time.